Today, we're joined by esteemed immigration attorney Ed Beshara, managing partner of Beshara PA. Ed has been exclusively practicing U.S. immigration law and offering approvable solutions since 1983 in Orlando, Florida, and represents corporate and individual clients from countries worldwide in regard to their business and family U.S. visa goals. He has received AILA's highest award for outstanding contributions and has been named one of the best U.S. immigration lawyers in the United States of America. Ed, thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd like to introduce yourself, go right ahead.
Good. Thank you very much for the introduction. But just very briefly, I have a passion to help, foreign nationals enter the United States. I was born in Australia and educated there. Third generation Australian on my father's side and third generation American on my mother's side. And when I was in Australia, I went to law school. I obtained 2 law degrees from Monash University in Melbourne, Australia, and pursued a master's in international law. I also was a tutor at the university in business and corporate law. When I came to the United States, my mother's from Massachusetts, but we ended up settling with some of her family in Orlando, Florida, and I had to go back to law school. And so I went back to law school at the University of Florida, Gators Law School, obtained my Juris Doctor, and since then I went back, and as you said, I've been practicing immigration law in Orlando in 1983, first immigration lawyer in Orlando. And then I went back a few years later to be an adjunct professor of business immigration law at the University of Florida Law School. As you said, I've been involved in many organizations, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, Central Florida president of the Orange County Bar Association for the immigration law section. Been involved, like you, with different EB-5 organizations now, as far as Invest in USA, one of the best practice committee, New Investor Markets Committee. Just attended a conference for EB-5 Investors Magazine. We saw each other at the conference in Newport Beach. And also just been very much involved in lobbying, trying to get, immigration reform done for EB-5. I've been doing EB-5 since the beginning, 32 years ago. And we've taken this message globally to different countries and told people that want to come to the US about the EB-5 program. And when people forget about the EB-5s, then they think of my name, Edward Beshara. I go by Edward. So EB, Edward Beshara. I was born on July the 5th, so that's EB-5, and the number of our office building here is 555.
Perfect.
So maybe I'm meant to do EB-5.
Yeah, it sounds like. Well, based on all the accolades you just shared, it certainly sounds like it. So, again, thank you so much for being here. You're obviously the perfect person to talk to about today's topic. We're going to chat a little bit about, this recent 75 country ban, so to speak. What it means for EB-5, what it means in regards to RIA, that sort of thing. So, very excited to have you. And if it's all right with you, I'd like to just jump right into the questions so that we can begin the conversation about what's going on.
Please go ahead.
So I guess the first thing is relatively simple. What is the actual legal mechanism behind this 75 country ban? Is it based on statute, regulation, executive authority? And is it different at all from, the earlier Trump era travel bans? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, first of all, the travel ban is an executive order, right? A proclamation by the president. In this case, President Trump, and he places the authority to do this on the Constitution, right? So for this ban, he directed the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Director of National Intelligence, to identify countries, in his opinion, or their opinion, that threaten national security, and that's a very wide definition, right? And the basis then would warrant the suspension on admission pursuant to Section 212F of the Immigration Nationality Act. So that's the basis. It's not an act of Congress, but it's an executive order by the president. And, we would have Trump hopefully change his mind later on because he knows EB-5 very well. right? And his whole family and friends were involved in EB-5 projects with him. So this ban, can it be lifted? Yes, by him, of course. But we can get into that later of what happens to the citizens of these countries.
Sure.
And we need the citizens of some of these countries because they are astute business people and they could be very good for this country from that standpoint.
Right, absolutely. Well, so on that note, it seems like this could conflict with, the RIA's intent to promote investment-based immigration. It's kind of an obvious question, but I mean, do you think that's the case? Does it seem like it's clearly conflicting with the RIA's intent to promote?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's conflicting with the intent to promote.
Mhm.
I think, we've got the Reform Integrity Act, and that's another point, we can talk all day about what has to be done. But the Reform Integrity Act 2022 allows EB-5 investors to invest before September of this year, 26, because the grandfathering of investors then would be helpful to the EB-5 regional centers and the investors. I think that we need somehow to continue our lobbying efforts to get the Reform Integrity Act continued beyond 2027 and allow investors to continue in EB-5 regional center projects, right? But as far as this ban, is it going to stop EB-5 investors from moving forward? No, not at all. We've seen a history of EB-5 investors filing their petitions with regional centers and retrogression, waiting for the waiting line to be finished so they can then apply for the immigrant visa. So we could really treat this ban similar to retrogression, right?
Interesting.
What happened before. Now, of course, we'll go into a little bit more detail later, but there's a solution for those foreign nationals from the banned countries that if they're in the US, they still can move forward and apply for the green card. No waiting.
Okay.
Okay, so we can get to that later.
Sure. Well, it kind of leads into my next question as well, which is that are there due process concerns for applicants who already have approved petitions, but could now be blocked at the visa issuance stage?
Yeah. Look, I think that, remember, filing an EB-5 petition, which needs to be done now to grandfather oneself in if already filed. The EB-5 petition is not an application for permanent residence. Okay. So if the immigrant petition is filed and the foreign national is in another country, banned country, but if they have a non-immigrant visa, they could still enter the United States, right? Or apply for a non-immigrant visa in the banned country at the consul because it's not an immigrant visa. So the banned countries mean that the foreign nationals from those countries are banned from getting an immigrant visa, right? So, again, the due process can still be there, right? And basically with the due process still there, you can still move forward with EB-5.
Got it.
Right?
So do you see this as something that could shift investor demand towards something like adjustment of status strategies or towards specific nationalities, or no?
Yeah. One has to be very careful when we talk about EB-5 investors and adjusting status. If they're outside the US, the industry cannot advise a EB-5 investor to enter the United States and then immediately apply for adjustment because that's a conflict of their non-immigrant entry. We'll look at some exceptions, but if they've got a visitor's visa and they say, we want to visit the US, sure, but their entry at the time should be non-immigrant intent. State of mind, I'm coming in just to be a non-immigrant 100%, and then I'm leaving to go back. But, there's a policy that, when someone comes in as a visitor, as an example, and they're visiting and they're staying here for a few months and they love it here and they like it, and then they say, after 90 days, instead of just visiting, we'd like to apply for the green card based upon our EB-5 petition. They can do that. So even though you're from a banned country, if you're in the US, visitor, and after a period of time, you can apply for residency without leaving. You apply for permanent residency with your EB-5 petition that may have already been filed or will be filed. and then you apply for employment authorization and apply for permission to travel, which is called a VAS parole, to be able to leave and come back. You can do all this in the US, even if you're from a banned country. But remember, you have to wait before you can work to get that employment card. You have to wait
Sure.
in the United States to get that document that's called a VAS parole before you can leave and come back.
Got it. Got it. So I want to shift gears a little bit and ask, from a macroeconomic perspective, do you think there's any effect from this 75 country ban? Is there some sort of economic impact, right, that could happen to these U.S. development projects that rely on EB-5 capital if you're a developer?
I would say no. And the reason I say that is we go back in time when if one filed an EB-5 petition with a regional center, that there was retrogression. In other words, you invested, whether it was a rural area or target employment area, and now they're called set-asides. But even if you invested in these areas, there was a waiting period before you could apply for the green card. That's number one. So retrogression for certain countries could have been 2 years or 3 years. But remember this, that in the past, an EB-5 still survived for the regional centers and the investors, that if one filed their EB-5 petition, they would have to wait for the government to approve the petition before they could apply. So it was a double effect. You had to wait, and there was a period of time you had to wait, could be a year or whatever, for that petition to be approved before you could apply. And then if there was a waiting line, because the demand was greater than the supply of immigrant visas being available, then you would wait, and then when the time was correct, you would then apply. So even though we have this ban, and people may have to wait, we still go back in time to what it was, and the demand was still high for EB-5, even if there was a waiting period for petition approval, and before you could apply, you had to get that petition approval. So
Sure.
We're still looking at the past, which was still very successful for the EB-5 industry and the investors.
Right. So do you expect any legal challenges to this policy? And if so, on what grounds would they be brought?
Yeah, I can see that, it's very hard to bring legal challenges when it's an executive order.
Right.
Right. So, I think lobbying with, the Congress could help influence Mr. Trump, and as I said, Mr. Trump is very knowledgeable about EB-5. Some of his best friends help him with the marketing efforts to obtain foreign investors. His family is involved in the building of hotel projects, EB-5 projects. So he knows EB-5. He knows that EB-5 is based upon an investment from a foreign national, but it's also a requirement that jobs are going to be created. So under an regional center, indirect, induced, and direct jobs are created. That's a legal requirement. So he knows that the economy can be helped by the foreign investors committing funds to an EB-5 regional center project.
Right. Absolutely. So we've touched on this a little bit already, but I just want to ask it clearly. Investors from affected countries, right? Is there anything they should be doing right now if they are mid-process?
Yeah, I think that the fact that it is a immigrant visa ban, and if these investors are from those countries or not, I think that now is the time to invest in an EB-5 regional center project, right? And when clients come to us and they sometimes say, well, Edward, can we do a cost analysis of the best alternative visa process or immigration process or even non-immigrant process to come into the United States and be here with themselves, their spouses and family. And when we look at the cost analysis of them putting money in their own EB-5 business, direct, the cost of putting money in their own business, if it's based upon the fact that they're a citizen of a treaty country for E2 visas, or if they're an executive owner of a big company overseas, and then they say we want to do a non-immigrant entry into the US under an L1 intracompany transfer. So when we're looking at the overall expense, their investment requirement to put money into their own businesses to build up the business so they can continue to stay in the United States, it's far more expensive, substantially more expensive than getting involved in an EB-5 investment in a EB-5 regional center. No, because you've got a set amount for EB-5 regional centers, then you have an admin fee, then you've got the attorney's fee, and then you might get with your international tax accountants, etc.
Sure.
But the outlay is the lowest. If you want to do your own EB-5 project, of course, the cost is higher. You're going to have to spend money on infrastructure. You have to spend money on creating jobs.
Right.
If you're coming in as a non-immigrant intra-company transfer, then you have to spend money on building up an organizational infrastructure, hire, these executive managers. And then all that is an expense, which is very high. So if they're looking at the least expensive way of moving forward, EB-5 regional center investment is the least expensive.
Got it. So we touched a little bit on adjustment of status earlier, but other sort of, I guess, lawful workarounds, like maybe dual nationality or category selection for EB-5, could those factors mitigate the impact of this ban at all, you think?
Well, yeah, I think that, if you're dual national, like I'm a dual national, I'm Australian and American.
Sure.
So the point is that if you are a national of a banned country, but you also have citizenship and a national of a non-banned country, of course, you can use that, whatever visa associated with a non-banned country to make an entry into the US. I think that if you're from a country that's not banned and you have citizenship, then if you are going to be applying for an immigrant visa based upon your second nationality that's not banned, then I would try to get that immigrant visa at the consulate in their own country that's not banned. Okay, because I think it wouldn't be wise to go to the consulate in the banned country and say, I want an immigrant visa because I'm a citizen of another country. No, I would do that.
Right.
And then also, don't forget, you are looking at the possibility that you could come to the US if you're an immigrant, if you're a citizen of another country, and you may be able to come to the US as a non-immigrant visitor.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can come in under the visa waiver program. Sometimes you can come in with an actual non-immigrant visa, or have another type of non-immigrant visa that allows you to enter the US to work in the US. Then once you're here in the US and you've done it legally with a proper intent, then there's a period of time when they say, well, we can then now apply for residency based upon our previous EB-5 petition that's been filed with the regional center.
Right, I follow. So with that said, I mean, how should families in particular thinking about an EB-5 petition, how should they adjust their thoughts about school planning, relocation timing, financial commitments in light of this maybe uncertainty right now?
Yeah, so basically, I think that it's a balance between intent, honest intent, and planning about the different possibilities.
Sure.
Okay, remember, anyone coming in as a non-immigrant has to have the intent to be here for a short period and then return to their home country. And these could be people that have second citizenship of a non-banned country, right? Right, or coming in as a non-immigrant. So one has to do some planning, and they do have to do some reading about if they do have a family of children, when is the right time for the children to be able to go to school, if it's going to be in the US. Can they continue remote learning because they're coming from a country that may offer remote learning until they get the permission to be able to go to school. So if you're coming into the US and you say, okay, if there is going to be an application filed for residency, then there will be a period of time before the principals can, husband, wife, etc., work.
Right.
Because they need an employment card.
Sure.
Then there will be a period of time before people can leave, because you need that permission, advance parole, to be obtained in the US before you leave the US so you can come back in. If you leave the United States without getting this advanced parole, then your applications for your whole family are abandoned because you left before getting advanced parole and you can't come back. Right. And then it'd be very difficult to come back as a non-immigrant visitor, for example, if you've already shown the government that your intent is to apply for the green card. Right. So I think planning on what the schools will allow, planning on, if you want to continue business activities, when can you, right? So timing is very important and planning is very important. But so there's nothing wrong in planning possibilities, but you cannot plan to enter as a non-immigrant visitor with the intent to apply for the green card.
Right.
The intent has to come about after you arrive, and let's say, to be on the safe side, 90 days.
Got it. So that intent factor really plays an important role here.
Well, yes. Like when you don't want to come to the airport and saying, I'm coming in as a visitor, and you've got luggage packed.
Sure.
As if you can move in,
Absolutely. Well, we've touched on a lot of the different, factors that could be affected here by the travel ban. And it's tough to do this maybe, but if you had to summarize this policy's long-term impact on EB-5, on business immigration, how would you try to do that if you had to summarize it?
Okay, summarize it. It's still viable. Okay, EB-5 still viable. EB-5 Regional Center project still viable. It's one of the most effective ways of becoming an immigrant, not only for oneself as the investor, but for the family members. And we should not stop the process, right? Yes, right now, there are lobbying efforts going on to extend the EB-5 Regional Center program, but today, and when we look at the EB-5 industry, today, there are very good viable projects from Houston EB-5. There are very viable ways that the investor should move forward, not hesitate to make the investment and use that as a basis for being able to apply for residency, right? And as we said previously, there are various ways that one can still do that. If one is already in the US as a non-immigrant, they can still move forward and apply and get their residency, right, in the US for themselves and their family, right? But remember, it should not be a detriment that we have this ban right now if we really honestly think about EB-5 and the success of EB-5 projects, of what happened previously when you had to wait for the petition to be approved, and because there was stretch growth, you had to wait for the waiting line to be over before you could apply.
Sure.
Applying the same circumstance to what could happen now is no different, right? In my opinion, I think if people want to get a green card through this investment, then continue to think that you can do it.
Absolutely. Well, look, that's very reassuring to hear for people, strongly considering EB-5 right now, or who are concerned about, this sort of travel ban or any of the 75 country ban. It's certainly very reassuring news coming from someone like you. For anyone, seeking immigration counsel and they want to get in touch with you or your office, do you want to advise on how to do that? Best way to do that?
Sure. It's very easy. My email address is ebesharah@besharapa.com, which is ebeshara, Beshara PA, PA is for professional association.com, or the main phone number here, or phone number here at work could be 1-407-571-6892. And then we have staff that will arrange a conference call. Always mention that if you are calling, that you heard this webinar with EB-5 Houston, and we'll definitely look after you, because EB-5 Houston is a great company and a very effective EB-5 Regional Center.
Appreciate that very much, Ed. Thank you so much, and really appreciate your time today. You have any final thoughts you want to share? Or are we, ready to?
Yes. Yeah, there's one thing that I always say to EB-5 investors. The last word in self-help is help. The last word in self-help is help. Don't think that you can do this yourself. don't think you can make decisions just by yourself. The EB-5 Regional Centre, the immigration attorneys, investment advisors, your accountants, etc., international, they are all going to participate in this decision making, right? Because the US is different than your own country. The professionals that I mentioned, immigration attorney, EB-5 attorney, EB-5 Houston Regional Center, we're all there to help you to make the transition. And so, when you think, well, it's only logical, it's business sense, yes, on one hand, but on the other hand, you've got the US Immigration Service. So you need to be able to have the professionals, have the EB-5 Regional Center, Houston EB-5, Edward Beshara, all help you making the transition into this EB-5 Regional Center project, the process of getting immigration for not only you, but the family, right? This is where, don't try to think you can do this yourself. You need the team. You need help.
Absolutely. Agreed entirely, Ed. Really, really good advice. And again, we really appreciate your time today. People know how to reach out to you if they want to get in touch. And, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Have
very
a good
much.
one.